Good afternoon and welcome to today's innovative roundtable discussion and webinar on combat margin pressures, talent challenges, and COVID-19 with a connected worker strategy. I'm Cindy Mays and I want to thank you all for joining us today. We really want this to be an interactive discussion, so if you have a question, just click on the chat icon at the bottom of your screen and send in your remarks. The panel will get to as many comments as possible in the question and answering session at the end of this presentation. We will be tweeting during today's discussion from the handle @Innovactive, and you can also follow the conversation with #ConnectedWorker. Now let's get right to it. In the deadly combination of COVID-19, continued profit margin pressures, talent challenges, skill gaps, aging workforce, tribal knowledge, and heightened safety protocols is focusing businesses to think differently, reinvent themselves, and reimagine their operations. For today's panel discussion, I am joined by 3 industry and technology experts that are paving the way for Industry 5.0. As the CEO and co-founder of Innovactive, Sandeep V. Ravande believes in a better way of running plant-based operations. He envisions that the frontline worker needs to be empowered to get their job done faster, better, and safer. Prior to co-founding Innovactive Incorporated, Sandeep worked with several Big 5 consulting firms, such as IBM and Accenture, serving several Fortune 500 clients, such as Verizon, Shell, Mead Johnson Nutrition, Coca-Cola, and FMC Corporation, to help them reinvent and reimagine their business operations with digital technologies. We also have Shri Karthik joining us in the discussion panel today. Shri is the Senior Vice President of Solution Engineering at Innovactive. Shri has extensive experience in software sales and project management in enterprise asset management and the supply chain domain. His experience spans across several industries, including utilities, oil and gas, mining, food and beverage, chemicals, and life sciences, with clients from different geographical regions throughout the world. And finally, we have David April, who is the head of product management at Innovactive. David has been in enterprise mobility software development for over 20+ years. David has led product architecture, development, and management for mobile solutions at Cyclo LLC and SAP. He joined Innovactive in 2019 to drive the connected worker and Industry 5.0 paradigm shift. Now, to keep us on time, I'll turn it over to Sandeep V. Ravande, the CEO and co-founder and the moderator for today's panel discussion. Over to you, Sandeep.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. Folks, this is going to be a very insightful panel discussion and, quite frankly, an opportunity for all companies to proactively plan and learn how to handle a major economic and talent crisis that I believe is about to unfold for many companies in the next 5 to 10 years, and predominantly the asset-intensive industry companies. Folks, in the waves of industrialization, we have seen the steam engines replace horses and men. Then electricity replaced the engines. All these took about centuries for adoption, if you think of it. And then in the last 3 decades, software took over and automated the processes. The likes of SAP, could be Oracle, Salesforce. These softwares went out and automated workflows, processes, and became a great system of record ultimately, right? In the last 10 years, from 2010 to about 2020, we have seen sensors enabling telemetry to connect devices assets, products, customers, and we call this Industry 4.0. Many companies have been riding these waves, the Industry 4.0. They call it smart factories, smart initiatives, and so on. That is Industry 4.0. While Industry 4.0 in the last 10 years has promised a raft of automation, which, by the way, in most enterprises is the new normal right now. But if you think of how operations are still run in these large enterprises, there's still a very set of tedious, linear steps, slow, inaccurate, and highly inefficient. In all of this, your frontline workers or your field technicians or your warehouse workers have always been standing on the sidelines for the last 20 years, just watching and waiting. So folks, forward-looking companies are now leading an Industry 5.0 revolution. This paradigm shift with Industry 5.0 is where frontline worker is now in the center of everything around your business. Think about this. Think about machines, methods, workflows, new technologies, AI, ML, augmented reality, and you have a worker that is sitting in the middle of all of this. And how you empower that frontline worker to connect with all of these moving parts, processes, machines, sensors, workflows, to connect in a very seamless manner to create a connected worker of the 21st century economy. Folks, today's webinar and the round panel discussion is going to focus on this topic. Let me quickly bring a few facts to all of you guys. By 2050, in the next 30 years, the world population is estimated to grow from 9.6 billion to from 7.6 billion, to 9.6 billion. This growing population is going to be welcomed by many companies. Growing consumer demand, creation of new jobs, creation of more wealth, revenue. But ultimately, many of these industries, the growing demand means that they expect to make new investments into manufacturing facilities, production facilities, and creating a positive impact to the economy. Don't forget, to run these operations, you still need to hire your frontline workers. The new frontline workers still need to be hired to run those operations. Ultimately, I personally believe that this will create a positive impact to the economy, but then it will also ensure that the frontline worker is made the center of everything that you do in your business to run an efficient operations while improving your top line and then ultimately widening your profit margins. So folks, let's get right into the conversation, right? So if you look at what we're going to discuss today, we're talking about 350 million frontline workers that are available worldwide today. So the opportunities I was discussing with the population growing from 7.6 billion to 9.5 billion, we're talking about these new opportunities that are about to create new sets of challenges, especially in the COVID-19 era. With 350 million frontline workers worldwide today, we believe they are an extremely underserved community in the last 20 years, as described earlier. All these frontline workers have been waiting in the sidelines as companies drove automation through Industry 4.0, but then the field worker or the frontline worker has been sitting and waiting. In this panel discussion, we will discuss the following 4 challenges. Number 1, continued decline in profit margins and associated pressures. We are seeing this over the last 15 years where companies have tremendous pressure to widen their profit margins, improve their operational efficiencies, while also improving their top line. So we're going to talk a lot about this in the next 30 minutes. The second, aging frontline workers with tribal knowledge is starting to disappear. And it's not starting to disappear in the next 20 years. It's now. It's happening, folks. And this is a problem that needs to be addressed by just not maintenance managers or directors and VPs. This is a C-level problem. This is a C-suite problem. This is a priority for the board, which we'll talk about very shortly here. Number 3, how do you get ready for the digital natives? Think about your kids. They were born with an iPhone. They were born with an iPad. They don't understand walkie-talkies. They don't understand binders. They don't understand sets of files that we put in a cabinet, right? They don't even understand. They can't even relate to that, right? So you're talking about digital natives. Remember when I spoke about the growing population from 7.6 billion to 9.6 billion? That 2 billion, you bet, are digital natives coming into the workforce, right? So you got to be thinking about how you get ready to take care of those digital natives. And then the fourth, COVID-19. It's an unprecedented time that we are all in. COVID-19 has made us reimagine and reinvent how we run businesses, including companies like us. COVID-19 is causing impacts to operations, maintenance, frontline workers. So how do you make safety at the center of everything for your frontline worker? Is it going to be the same way you did business earlier? Or are you going to do things differently? Are you going to reimagine your business? Are you going to reinvent your business? And these are the four topics that we're going to have a very insightful conversation with my colleagues here, Sri and David. So folks, let's get right into it. David, first question to you, David. You know, I spoke a little bit about profit margins, associated pressures, but even before we dive into that, I spoke a little bit about the connected worker for the 21st century economy, right? Many people don't even understand what a connected worker is. For a lot of folks, a connected worker is purely a mobile app or enabling a worker with a mobile device. So what is a connected worker, David? You know, especially you come from Cyclo, you spent a lot of time with SAP where you did a lot of enterprise mobility stuff. So people tend to think that mobile is the connected worker. Can you describe to the audience what you believe the connected worker is?
Sure thing, Sandeep. Thanks. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. We're getting a lot of thunder here in downtown Houston at least, but I'll try to speak over that. But you're right. It's not just about mobility, right? I mean, it used to be. That's really the center of things. Obviously, you know, the connected worker needs to be connected, but it's not just about connectivity. In fact, you know, that was the original challenge was you had to give the value proposition of mobility, and people didn't get, you know, why should they make that investment? But we used to have a joke about that at Cyclo. You know, a couple decades ago, it was, you know, every year we were making progress with our applications and adding more functionality to our mobile apps. But, you know, every year we'd say, this is the year of mobile data. This is the year of mobile data. And finally, in 2007, when the iPhone came around, the light bulbs went on. Everybody saw the value of it because suddenly the consumer world is embracing this. And by extension, everybody in the industrial world also started to see, you know, why you need to have this happening. So like you're saying, you know, it's a convergence. It's a lot of things, you know, as you know, Sandeep, we like to talk about conversations, right? So when we're having conversations, it's not just between me and you, it's not just between me and my backend system. It's really in a lot of ways, this convergence of me conversing with things I'm interacting with in the virtual world and things I'm interacting with in the physical world. So let me give you a couple examples here. I need to engage all my senses in what I'm doing, right? I'm, you know, I've got my phone, I've got my tablet, I've got whatever mobile device is allowing me to be connected, but I'm still doing my job in an industrial setting, and I have to put that device down if I'm in a bucket truck doing some utility repairs, if I'm hanging on the side of a pole, if I'm you know, working on something that's requiring both my hands. So I need to engage my senses and extend them in ways, right? So if I'm wearing smart glasses, I can work hands-free, and I can have that. I can still have the guidance that I need and the information coming in, but I can use the tools that I need or use my hands. If I'm using a drone is, again, it's nothing more than an extension of my eyes and ears, right? It's allowing me to go to a remote or dangerous or hard to reach place and get that same information and make a decision before I have to take the time to drive to that location or, you know, go on top of a roof or you know, otherwise put myself in harm's way. In hopefully a safe setting, of course, not just harm's way. And then, you know, as more and more of the devices themselves are connecting, as I'm getting smart assets with industrial IoT, the devices, the assets themselves, the equipment are joining the conversation, right? I can have an industrial piece of equipment tell me it's industrial health, right? I can have it have a pressure monitor, a temperature monitor, a vibration monitor, tell me about a problem that might be occurring before it becomes serious enough that I have to take production down. So I can see a problem that might be occurring, I can schedule that, and then I can react to it. And those sensors, extend beyond the devices. They extend to my personal body. I can wear personal health and safety and environmental monitoring equipment, so that and someone who is tracking me if I'm working in a confined space or I'm working in some kind of dangerous environment, you can make sure my respiration is okay, make sure my heartbeat's okay, make sure that whatever the air conditions are around me are acceptable as an environment for me to be working in. And finally, the conversations that I have, as you mentioned, Sandeep, about the aging workforce, if I have the experts who've been around with this so-called tribal knowledge, this institutional memory that we all know about, that they're the experts, and they are leaving the company, they're dwindling, there's just a few people with that institutional memory and tribal knowledge. I want to be able to connect with them. I want to be able to talk with them if I don't know how to do something, and I've got all the guidance, I've got all my work instructions with me, but I'm still having a problem. I'd like to call Bill up and have Bill kind of be my over-the-shoulder guide and guide me through things. So all of this is really helping me, as you said, Sandeep, do my job better, faster, and safer.
Yeah, this is really good insights, David. Right? I mean, when you think about your life at Cyclo, for example, or you think about your life at SAP, right? You did a lot of work on mobile, but then, as we think about, the worker per se, right? And you think about the working life of that frontline worker is very different from developing a mobile app, right? It's about how do you empower this frontline worker with guided instructions or guided, capabilities that can help him do his job. In fact, many of the, what I've seen, I have the, honor to actually connect with a lot of Fortune 500 customers and discuss their problems and challenges, right? And what I've consistently heard from these customers is that they struggle to drive adoption and ownership of that application. It's quite natural if you think of it, folks, right? I mean, it's quite natural. Will you use an application that doesn't help you improve your life? Will you use that application? Because most of these mobile applications that are out there in the market, my personal observation is it's all about tracking the data for the corporate. It's not about how do I build an application that completely helps the frontline worker do his job better, right? So, and when you think about improving the working life of the frontline worker, folks, we are in a time where technologies have evolved so much beyond mobile that we have a unique opportunity to make that worker at the center of everything so he can seamlessly connect with machines, methods, workflows, and so on. So David, thank you for explaining that, how we can improve the working life of the frontline worker. At this time, I'd like to pivot a little bit to Sri Karthik. Sri Karthik, you've been with Innovaptive for a long time, literally from day one, and you have had the honor, just like me, to connect with thousands, if not, maybe hundreds and thousands of customers over the last 8 years, right? And you've heard a lot about their pains, their challenges. One consistent theme we have seen is shrinking profit margins across the board, right? So can you share, Sri, with the audience here? We have heard about this exponential growth, which will give opportunity to, improve the top line by the population growing from 7.4 billion to 9.6 billion. But then at the same time, many of these companies are, impacted with regulatory pressures, right? For example, carbon emissions, sustainability, footprint. If you look at companies in China, they have much more, ease in terms of how they're regulated versus the companies in America. So all these are costs that are being added to these companies, which means it's creating pressures on their margins, right? So how should companies respond to such a situation? Can the connected worker story that we have spoken apply to improve their profit margins?
Sure, Sandeep. The only answer to tackling profit margin pressures, is to improve the top line and, frankly, operate more efficiently, right? Companies have to learn to do more with less, and implementing technologies and platforms that drives operational efficiencies are important to look at, right? I'd like to share a story here, right? What we did for one of our upstream E&P clients, right? Where the primary goal was to improve operational efficiency. And the goal that was set to us was about a 20% improvement in OE for their field maintenance team. They did the math, right? And the estimated savings there was in the range of close to $10 million annually across their entire field workforce, about 600 field technicians. Yeah. So what we did was we analyzed their processes, and even though they had an excellent process and procedure and all of that in place, the problem was it was sitting in folders and binders back in the office, right? Knowledge wasn't reaching the frontline workforce, and this was adding wastage to work execution times. So we said, how can we make it easy to train the users first, reduce quality issues, implement standardization, and helping these technicians do work accurately every time, right? That was kind of the thought process.
Yep. So what you're saying is, the companies only have two options: either increase your top line or improve your operational efficiencies to improve your profit margins, right? And when you think about improving operational efficiencies, you're really thinking about fixing a pump in 30 minutes versus 1 hour. I mean, simply put, right? It's more workforce capacity. It's a highly productive frontline worker ultimately. But the biggest challenge people face is they think about mobile, as a silver line bullet. They deploy that mobile solution, and they think that automatically that's going to help them actually fix that pump in 30 minutes versus an hour. But the reality is, the actual work done by that frontline worker, Sri, is actually not based on what's available in the mobile app, or what's available in SAP, or what's in Oracle, or IBM Maximo. If you need to fix a pump, you may have like 30 job steps or like work instructions. Many of the solutions don't even enable you with those kind of capabilities, right? By giving you step-by-step work instructions that integrates with corporate data that the corporate cares about, and integrating two together, that creates a win-win, which means the corporate wins with the data that they need, but the frontline worker gets step-by-step instructions, right? Is that kind of what you're suggesting in terms of how companies can think of improving profit margins?
Exactly, that's a great example, right? Let me share with you an example of what our team did there, right? So, and this is just one of the examples. Over the span of around, I think it was close to 3 months, we digitized close to 200 of similar processes, right? So the maintenance technician, they're used to working with work orders, right? And primarily when you look at their job instructions, which typically exists in the form of a paper document similar to this, it is, a list of steps. And, odds are some of them have this printed out, some of them don't, some of them have it available on their tablet, but it's not easy to read, consume, and especially when you're dealing with heavy industrial equipment in a dangerous environment, this is not the first thing that you go to, right? So we said, how can we make it more intuitive and useful for the technicians to go in and get these information they need, right? How do we make it more visual? And so we use our tool to instantly make it more visual and digitize a lot of these step-by-step instructions, right? So this is now the technicians can interact with a guided procedure, which is what this is. So this is a work procedure for the same step-by-step, where you can see, it guides them onto what they need to do. Even it tells them, the order in which they need to torque their screws, right? What is the right spec of lock type to use? What are my torque tightening guidelines, right? It's giving them everything that they need in a very guided step-by-step workflow that allows them to just visually consume this data. So all they do is they set their tablets on the side and scroll through this page. And once they're completed, it even prompts them to check for key settings over there. And if they try to submit a job without filling in, key tests, it alerts them. So that way, they're not missing out on quality here. So it forces them to actually go in and submit this information. And, once they're submitted, they can, print out a report and, even get it signed off by, their customer on site. So things like this is what will cut down that 4 hours of time it takes to install or fix the pump, and make it something like 2 hours, right? That wastage when it comes to installing that asset gets eliminated. Hopefully that makes sense.
Makes total sense, Sri. In fact, if you think of from an adoption standpoint, because ultimately no technology works without adoption. It's as simple as that. I need to have a reason to use corporate applications, which means the corporate application should be designed to get my job done better and improve my working life, right? So it's so critical that I can do my job better. It's not about just capturing data in SAP or IBM Maximo. It's about, am I giving guided, instructions to help the frontline worker get the job done? So I think that example was great. But Sri, I'd like to, go quickly pivot into the other challenge that we promised the audience that we'll share with today, right? We spoke about talent challenges earlier on in my conversation, right? One of the facts is that the average age of the frontline worker today is about 44.1. It's been rapidly growing over the last 10 years, I would say. For example, in oil and gas industry, for example, they're predicting that in the next 5 to 7 years, 50% of the frontline workers are going to retire, right? I mean, and many industries are in a similar situation, essentially. And if you think about, if I was in this as a C-suite in these large companies or part of their board, I'd be concerned because the aging workforce is going to start disappearing, and they're going to start disappearing very quickly, not just with all the knowledge that they have, but then all the expertise that they can actually give to the frontline worker. So can connected worker strategies help with that challenge? I mean, this is a massive challenge that companies are going to face in the coming years. So how can companies think about solving this challenge? Tribal knowledge disappearance.
No, I completely get where you're going, right? This is, the skilled worker shortage. That's a big challenge for many of, the asset-intensive large enterprises, right? And a lot of enterprises are investing heavily on in-house training programs and learning courses, along with on-the-job training, as preferred training methods. But despite the heavy investment and focus on internal training programs, the pace of change that's happening today still exceeds the extent and capacity of these training programs, right? Take the situation we're in right now. Everything we did in January and before that does not work today, right? Given the circumstances change, how the plant operates changes due to external circumstances. And this is where integrating digital technologies can add value, right? We're working with an industrial manufacturing company where they just started using wearable headsets, right, to provide over-the-shoulder guidance to their engineers. And that is actually helping these engineers with visual cues on assembling and disassembling equipment, with viewing equipment schematics in the field. And they're able to do all of this while being connected over a Skype call to an expert, right? And that expert can support 4 or 5 technicians during the same shift. And this is another factor that's contributing to increase wrench times, right, by nearly 30 to 40%.
Yeah, that's interesting, Sri. So what you're essentially saying for the audience here is, I'm a frontline worker. I am new to the workforce. I don't have the kind of knowledge that a 30-year veteran has in the workforce. I need to get the job done. Earlier, you showed a great example of work instructions. Phenomenal. I got guided work instructions that I'm going through. I also have access to important SAP operational data, which is relevant because I need to know maintenance history. I need to know where the parts are, availability of the parts. I need to know a lot more information of that. So I've got both of this, but then I come to step number 17 and I get stuck and I need help. I don't know what to do right now, right? Typically, people pair them up with remote experts or experts, if you would, that kind of helps the, new frontline worker. But I think connected worker strategies can help drive that, right? Essentially, that's what you're saying, where we can promote hands-free operations with technologies like wearables, where you can actually talk to the application. You can have video, two-way video conferencing that is happening, as well as you're actually getting the guided work instruction, and the step that you're stuck at, you can now have your expert actually do a two-way conference and get you past that. Is that kind of what you're suggesting to the audience?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about here, right? And this is another use case that we've been working on, right? To allow maintenance engineers to use wearable headsets to get access to guided steps and guided procedures, right? So we're working on this technology, to accelerate some of those, digital execution, right, in the field. So here, what you'll see is in this small screen, this small wearable screen that I can wear over my head, right? I can actually, it's a full-size tablet, so I can see everything from pictures and images to schematics at the same time. And this is exactly where I run into an issue, and I can go in and call one of my remote supervisors to give me real-time assistance, right? And these devices are extremely intuitive, easy to use, because most of the operations are voice guided. So you're speaking in with commands and you're executing work, right? So in this example, what you'll see me do is I'm actually walking through the process of actually completing a maintenance work order. And the whole time, I'm hands-free completely. Everything I need is available in my wearable device. I'm getting instructions and I'm processing all of my work, keying in data. If I come across issues and faults in the field, I can quickly turn on my wearable device. I'll activate the camera through the device and say, I want to take a picture, right? All I got to do is 2 commands. I'm just taking a picture and I store that picture. And then I can even send this picture to my supervisor or my plant operator and give them immediate access to something that's happening in the field, right? And this is, things like this can really accelerate, some of the challenges that that's plaguing the frontline workers today.
Yeah, that was a great example and demo, Sri. Thanks for sharing that. Folks, if you think about, at a time when we released this and we were talking about this with our customers, a lot of people said that's quite a cool technology, but all we need is a mobile app, right? But here is the challenge that the market and the industry is facing right now. This is not about having a cool technology being deployed. This is a real need. This is happening today, folks, right? Companies like Colgate, Shell, they're actually deploying these devices today, recognizing their average demographics of their frontline workers, the age of their frontline workers, and recognizing, because they're really forward-looking companies from a technology perspective, and thinking about how they can use one remote expert technician to serve 10 new frontline workers who don't have the tribal knowledge. So you're scaling and then getting prepared for the crisis that is about to unfold, right? So hands-free operation is not a cool technology. It's a need right now, unfortunately. And when you think about connected worker, I strongly urge the audience not to think about a mobile app, right? Think about these macro level issues that the customers are facing and is about to face as you think about designing your strategy and how you go about, tackling these challenges for the frontline worker, which, by the way, is really the Industry 5.0. It's about the worker being at the center of everything, right? So you want to think, forward-looking from that perspective. So thanks, Sri. That was a really good demo. Why don't we pivot now quickly to David here? But before we do that, I quickly want to highlight a couple of things on the digital natives. I spoke a little bit about the digital natives, as you guys, are aware. The growing population, as I said, is going to grow from 7.6 billion to 9.6 billion. We've discussed several challenges here already, right? We spoke about shrinking profit margins. We spoke about the aging workforce. We spoke about tribal knowledge. While this growth is the good news, the bad news for the companies is that the ones that are going to be technology laggards are really going to face a hard time to recruit retain and attract the top talent. Here's why. If you look at the screen right now, that's a baby with an iPhone. And that baby with the iPhone knows nothing better than the iPhone. And many of those folks are actually coming and joining the workforce now. Many of these frontline workers are born digital natives. They expect everything digital in their life. We expect to see a talent war, literally, because think about this, 7.6 billion going to 9.5 billion, lot of people, lot of consumer demand, lot of new frontline workers needed, frontline workers coming with digital natives, and these digital natives are going to have a choice where they choose to work. The new frontline worker will be expected to perform highly complex jobs and processes. And remember, with minimal human interactions. Guess why? In the COVID-19 era. So as I said earlier, big fat binders, walkie-talkies, large pages of work instructions will no longer even be an option. That's the ground reality that we all need to accept today. And then availability of experts to handhold these frontline workers is also rapidly diminishing, right? So if you look at what Sri demonstrated, it's an example of how you can scale an expert to 10 other frontline workers by giving a two-way video conferencing, integrating that with SAP operational data and the work instructions. So the COVID-19 situation makes things worse now with social distancing, right? Pre-COVID-19, we had a crisis already. Post-COVID-19, this crisis gets worse. Post-COVID-19, with social distancing guidelines to keep machines running and to keep the spare parts being made available at the right place and at the right time, is going to be even more critical and more challenging than it's been before, right? So let's quickly pivot our attention to the fourth challenge that we promised to cover today, right? So the frontline worker in the COVID-19 era. David, I'd like to bring you upon here to discuss this topic and this challenge. You know, David, in the midst of an unprecedented situation that we are all in today, which mankind has never seen, we've seen over 6.4 million COVID-19 cases already and rapidly growing. 380,000 deaths around the world. 100K of that is just in the United States. And companies need to reimagine their business and their operations to make worker safety the highest priority. No frontline worker, no operations. As simple as that. No operations, no revenue streams. As simple as that. So the traditional ways of working will not work. In fact, the Prime Minister of India recently publicly stated that digital technology adoption and digital transformation must be fast-tracked across the world to help practice social distancing. Not just in operations, but in every part of our life. We saw earlier today as well, when Sri showed the audience, how we can quickly integrate standard, step-by-step work instruction that could even include safety procedures within that, as an example, right? So what does it do? It allows the frontline worker to get the jobs done faster, better, cheaper, and safer. So safety is going to be, a bigger priority than we have ever seen before. Things such as location awareness, where are my workers, real-time worker health information, and then being able to integrate all of this to be able to understand how to practice social distancing is going to be a critical need. So David, with that, let me pivot to you, right? I know as head of product management at Innovative, right? You're charged with these kind of conversations with our customers, where you're being asked about, how can technologies help with, practicing social distancing? How do we integrate our overall operations? How do we integrate our, step-by-step workflows? So David, can you share with the audience, what are your thoughts around this area and your passion around it?
Sure. In fact, let me show you some of the things that we're working on here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for a moment. So let me know if you can see my my technology preview here of some features that we're adding to our M-Work Order product that we're looking at. And as both Sandeep and Sri mentioned earlier, some of the things that we want to consider is, we want to be able to address the needs of the pandemic. We want to be able to address some of these short-term considerations around safety, but really things that that we want to put, when we productize anything, we want to think longer term too, and we want to think more generally. And what features and capabilities do we want to put into the connected worker's hands? So what I want to do is take you through a simple day in the life of the COVID era connected worker. So here I'm on, in this case, an iPhone, and I'm going to use some of the capabilities that are native to this particular device here, and use biometric authentication, which is hooked into my authentication to my application. So I'm able to log in. But one of the things that we've done at our company. I think
you need to share your screen.
Oh, am I not sharing? I'm sorry, I thought I was. Let me come back. There we go. Can you see now?
Yes.
Everybody can see? Sorry about the delays there. So as I log into to my iPhone, one of the changes and policy changes that we've made here in the manufacturing facility that I'm a technician for is we've asked everybody to take their devices home with them. And in the morning, we want them to do a health and safety risk assessment. So basically just do some basic body function monitoring and symptom monitoring, things like that. So just like Sri was showing work instructions and the capabilities of quickly turning up digital forms using that, we can apply those to health and safety forms as well. And if the CDC or your particular organization has a particular form, you can incorporate that right into your login process. So as we're doing that, I'll come in and I can record my temperature. I can record some various symptoms that I may or may not be experiencing and answer questions like, have I been in contact with anybody who might have exhibited any symptoms? And as I'm filling these things out, you can see that not only am I capturing the data that I can use for whatever data capture purposes I need, but I'm also getting a result back from this form. So in this case, I'm getting an assessment back that says, if I answer that question as yes, I am at possible risk, right? It doesn't mean I have COVID, it means I just might be a possible risk. And my boss can make a determined decision from that. If I say no to that, you can see I'm at no risk, and I'll go ahead and do that for the purpose of this demo and submit that form. So I send that off to my supervisor, and she comes back and says, okay, Dave, you're cleared for work. Come on into the production area. So I'm going to go ahead and go into work and see my list of work orders for the day. I also get some news that's been pushed down to my device saying that there is some new personal protection equipment available. So I'm going to go ahead and collect that as part of my preparation for all of my jobs, and I'm going to examine my work for the day. I've got several work orders here. I'm going to look at this top high priority work order of a replacement of some fitting pipes. And as I go and I look through the operations, I can browse the work instructions if they're provided also, as Sri was showing earlier. I can see attachments and other media that might be associated, but I can also see a geospatial view of my production floor. This particular job requires me and a colleague to be working together, and I can see that my colleague Mark is actually on the site already. But because of COVID and because of social distancing, we're implementing some additional procedures to keep everybody safe. And I can see that, he is actually at that location. If I try to click on it, I get a reminder that says, hey, there's a social distancing alert. Mark's at the location. Don't go there yet. Let him do his work, and when he leaves, then you can do your part of the job. So I'll say okay to that, and I'm going to go ahead and look at the next job on my list here. In this case, it's our fan vibration analysis job. So if I click on that, I see a similar map that's going to let me get from where I need to go to where I am to where I need to go. So here is the map. I'm at this location here. The asset is down at the bottom of the screen here, you can see. And normally I might just go down this particular corridor, this particular aisle. But in doing so, I see that there's 3 other colleagues that are there. And so I can get guidance from the application that's also just assisting me, just making it easier to be safe, keep distance, and get to where I need to go. So it routes me around, taking into account the positions of other people, because I can just quickly adapt my indoor navigation to this particular use case. So I'm using indoor navigation, already in other ways, just to go from here to there in a very large facility. And now I can do it to enforce social distancing as well. And while I'm doing that, and while I'm working on that last job, I'm wearing a wearable. I'm wearing my Apple Watch. And in this case, since I'm hands-free and I'm concentrating on the fan analysis and taking that equipment apart to examine it, I get a notification that Mark left the location of the first job, and that at my convenience, I can go and I can finish that up, knowing that I won't be interacting with him. So continue to work safely and healthily using the connected worker strategy. So thanks, Sandeep.
Excellent, David. So I think if you think about what we have discussed, folks, so far, right? We discussed 4 business challenges: shrinking profit margins, the talent challenges, which is aging workforce, the tribal knowledge disappearance. We spoke about COVID-19 and worker safety. Those are the 4 big business challenges. We also gave a different perspective today about what we think about improving the worker's life, the frontline worker's life, right? Traditionally, companies are thinking about just deploying a mobile app. I'll build a cool mobile app and deploy it, or I'm going to, give a mobile solution for the worker. But if you look at the examples we have taken today, we've actually integrated a lot of the capabilities of mobile, agility in the platform, being able to, digitize your work instructions and so on. And then, bring it on a wearable smart glass, but then also use Apple Watch, be able to understand the worker health. And ultimately, I think this is all, what we call as a connected worker and much more. Ultimately, I think the interactions are going to lead to insights, and you're going to drive autonomy in your processes and workflows, which is later in the future. But I think immediate priority is really what we call as the connected worker strategy. So folks, at this time, I would really appreciate if the audience can, quickly take this poll. What is the most important challenge? You've heard about the different challenges we spoke so far. But, I would really appreciate it if you can take about 10 seconds and quickly complete this poll. And this will help, us to gather some data, and I can share that with the group as well today. All right, we'll give it a few more minutes as that quickly wraps up. But, I think while the audience is continuing to do that, I'd like to quickly, continue our conversations here with Sri and David. Firstly, Sri and David, thank you for sharing your thoughts and expertise with the audience today. As companies think of connected worker strategy, there are many alternatives, obviously, they can consider. Let's quickly spend about 5 minutes about what companies should be thinking about when they're thinking about best-in-class connected worker platforms, right? Let's quickly go into, 3-4 specific areas that, I'd like to get your, thoughts that you can share with the audience. David, let me begin with you. Why is security important, for enterprises, right? Because there are so many connected worker platforms out there that claim to do X, Y, Z. But then ultimately, the valuable data of these customers is extremely critical. So enterprise-grade security is very critical in connected worker platforms, right? Can you speak a little bit about what companies should consider before choosing a best-in-class platform?
Sure. I mean, companies have been dealing with mobility security issues for a long time now, and you have a lot of mobile device management tools and things that allow you to take that device itself and secure it and make sure that you've got encrypted data on the device, encrypted transmission. The ability to manage the devices remotely, whether I need to lock someone out or even go to an extreme and wipe the device. But like we're saying, is we're talking about the connected worker and the connected environment. If suddenly IoT is entering into the picture, I now not only have my worker's phone or tablet or other devices to worry about. I've got many additional connection points into my network in my enterprise. So I really have to start thinking, much more broadly about how my viewing my total connectivity and my total security standpoint from an IoT perspective, as well as just my mobile device management perspective.
Yeah. No, that's great insight. Sri, why don't I pivot to you here? You intimidated us by showing a lot of those work instructions. I can only imagine what the frontline worker needs to go through, but it certainly looked simplified once you digitized it. But we're talking about these customers having hundreds or thousands of work instructions. It'll take ages to actually digitize that, right? So can you give us a little bit of feel about how important agility, dynamism, no code, low code is important in selecting a platform?
Yeah, there's from what I've seen in the market, right? So there's either a very static, hard to change tool, or there's the other side, which is extremely complex tools that take a lot that you need basically professional developers to go work on, right? For example, the work procedure that I shared with you is kind of a 3-page document, right? With all the and you add the pictures, it kind of increases the size. It took about 20 minutes to create. That's pretty much how long it would take somebody using, let's say, Microsoft Excel or Adobe PDF to create that same document. Actually, it's much more digital, much more simpler on the config tool, because there's clear fields and clear steps that you just upload your document, and it automatically does the formatting and all of that in the background, right? So the ease of use, right? So making it agile enough that it can be configured, and also making it easy for the business to actually go in and configure this is what's going to drive the time to value, right? Because you don't want a solution that's going to take you a year to deploy. That does not translate into return on investment. So we want something that's quick, that's agile, and that can scale. Because also, if you're a large enterprise, you don't want different solutions for each location. You want a solution that can support multiple sites, multiple job profiles, multiple departments in the business. So that's kind of what needs to be there, right? The agility and scalability of the tool is very important.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think about large multinational companies, they're operating in like 80 countries with different languages. Not everyone is like, English only, right? I mean, you got to support Chinese, you got to support Malaysian, whatever, all kinds of languages worldwide, right? And, those kind of, Spanish, be it Portuguese, whatnot, right? So being able to take these work instructions and apply it globally at scale, and then not just that, but being able to dynamically respond to changes. Look at COVID-19, folks, right? I mean, every week there's a new CDC guideline on what's the definition of social distancing, right? And how you practice social distancing. How does businesses respond to such changes? You can be, if you don't have dynamism and agility in your platform, you cannot be responding to such changes. So thank you for sharing that and the importance that, customers need to consider. Sri, another quick question for you, right? The market has got a lot of noise, a lot of information in terms of like, I have a connected worker platform. Many people like to define connected worker platform as something such as a work instructions tool, right? Many platforms are out there that can do work instructions. And then you have on the other side, the companies that say, I got a mobile app that can mobilize your SAP operational data, right? But ultimately for customers that are running, large ERPs like SAP or, IBM Maximo, for these folks, both are equally important, because the operational data that's sitting there is important because I need to close out things in that so that my entire business runs on that ERP. But then I want to also empower the worker as well, right? Can you speak a little bit about customers running SAP or IBM Maximo, how they should be thinking about connected worker?
Absolutely. It says it all, right? Connected worker. You cannot put them in silos again, right? And now the silos cannot be the system of record, right? A real solution needs to span across multiple systems of record. Let's say if your core ERP is SAP, you need to pull in all of the information that is required out of the ERP system into your connected worker solution. So it's not just maintenance data, because if I'm a maintenance technician, I also need to know, what my availability of parts and tools are. I need to be able to order parts. If I need a part, I need to be able to create a purchase requisition or a purchase order. If I'm a supervisor, I want to approve that requisition or purchase order, or be it a work order, I need to be able to do that. And we've seen, in majority of the cases, all of these processes exist in an ERP system. And you want a connected worker platform that actually integrates with the ERP system and doesn't actually duplicate some of the processes that are happening in your core systems of records today. And we've seen a lot of tools that have a parallel ERP system where you have to replicate a lot of the data objects and elements, and that's really very it's not the way an integrated solution should work, right? So the key to the ERP system and getting that data in real time is critical within the platform.
Yeah, a great example is, I'm going through my work instructions, right? And I'm on job step number 7. It says issue the spare part. I mean, I better move that in SAP if I'm doing that. If I just complete that step and issue the spare parts, I wonder how you're going to keep accurate inventory, for example, right? So both are equally very important. That's a great example, Sri. Thanks for sharing that. David, let me pivot to you here, right? I know you're big as a head of products for Innovaptive. You're big on prepackaged content, right? You're always talking about how can we make our customers' life easier. Well, while we certainly have an extremely agile platform that you can build things out very quickly, like the work instructions that Sri showed here was built in 15 minutes, right? But we're very big on making things easier, right? I know, in the upcoming release in a month, we're releasing over 150 prepackaged forms and standard work instructions and standard operating procedures. Can you speak a little bit about that and how reconfigurable those are for the customers and why it's necessary for them?
Sure, Sandeep. I mean, again, it's just like Sri was mentioning, and just like you're saying as well. It's all about accelerating what you need to get done, right? So in order for the connected worker to be empowered, the connected worker is connected to everybody else. And that includes the planners and the engineers and everybody who is looking over these jobs and making sure that the processes and the safety procedures and everything else are in place and being followed, and that we're all compliant with regulations and things that we have to do. So a lot of those are across industry. A lot of those are industry specific. A lot of those are company specific. And if you can take a set that we're providing that are, we have some that are in vertical industries like oil and gas or nuclear procedures or just general health and safety procedures from OSHA and other things like that. You can take those prepackaged forms, you can take them and use them as is. You can modify them to suit your needs. As you were mentioning about, with COVID and the way, the organizations change things, if you can rapidly change. If a new guideline comes out and you either don't want to be capturing data that you were capturing before or need to change something, you can just, roll out a new version of that form and push it out to everybody very quickly. So it really comes down to acceleration, and it's always easier to modify something than it is to create it from scratch. So we just want to give tools to make all that easier.
Great. And I think from a product direction perspective, we will continue to add such capabilities, I'm assuming, for the customers to make their life easier as we learn more about different industries and whatnot. So thank you for sharing that as well, David. So folks, I think we are, coming to the top of the hour here, 3 minutes to go. I know we wanted to answer several questions here. Perhaps time for maybe a couple of questions. The first question we have here is, let me quickly scroll here from the audience, is really about, there's a lot of information that was here, but how do we get started, right? How does a customer get started? Sri, can you take that one? How does a customer really get started? Because there's a lot of information shared in 45 minutes here.
Yeah, no, you have to kind of pick and choose, right? With the focus is on, the end goal is providing a solution that can meet all of your requirements. But the way I advise my clients is, let's pick the top 1 or 2 use cases that bring immediate value and the highest value, right? And once you start your journey down that, the platform you select should make it easy for you to then extend that to other users, other workflows, right? So pick and choose 1 or 2 workflows and start there, right? And make sure you have a platform that can scale to your end goal, right? Choose a platform with the end goal in mind, but start small and build upon the initial success.
Yeah, and I think the business case and the ROI is very critical, right? I mean, people typically end up doing proof of concepts, to prove out a technology, right? And we have seen 95%. In fact, I think there's a statistic: 95% of them are all failures. In fact, they do the technology implementation, and the frontline worker says, "Great, but we don't want to use it," right? So you got to figure out, how you're going to make the technology investment a success. In relatively short time, like in weeks, literally, we're talking about 4, 6 weeks and 8 weeks, and then be able to get quick feedback, iterative feedback from the frontline worker. And then you're able to quickly compute, like you gave the example of $10 million savings for one of our prospects that you're working with, right? That you're driving for our prospect. So I think customers should think from that direction and think from a, more business perspective, not technology perspective, right? Business comes first, and then you can backtrack which technology. It could be Innovaptive, it could be anybody else, could be another connected worker platform, but start with the business case and the workflow like Sri mentioned. Folks, I think we just have time for one last question, right? I think, and this question is interesting because I have actually gotten this question several times in the field from many customers also directly, right? people always say, you know, we want to do so many things in technology and we want to drive digital transformation, but ultimately the workers don't adopt it. And I think I touched base upon that a lot today, right? So just like, you know, if you guys have read the book, Crossing the Chasm, your frontline workers are also segmented into different types of people. You have the early innovators, you have the early adopters, you'll have the early majority, you'll have the late majority, and then you'll have the laggards, right? So this is a mix of your demographics. You got to figure out how to get to your early innovators. You got to get to your early adopters quickly, make a beautiful use case out of that, show the impact, and then go into your early majority and then early, late majority, and then your laggards. And that's how you drive the adoption. And then remember one more thing, as I said, right? My last closing remarks here is you never deliver technology solutions to a worker that doesn't improve his life. This is not about corporate. This is about the worker. Make him the front and center of everything. And you can really bring these different technologies and platforms like what we offer at Innovaptive to really improve the working life of the frontline worker. So with that, I would like to end this on time. I thank each one of you for joining today. Please visit us at our website, innovaptive.com. There's a lot of good information out there about how we are responding to COVID-19, the different demos of our solutions. And like I said, for us, we want to be a trusted advisor to our customers. We don't have a bias one way or the other. There are many platforms out there. I'm sure you'll get a chance to evaluate us as one of the platforms for the future of what the operations will be like. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.